My dad, brother, and I went to see Death Wish. It was the first time the three of us were all together in quite a few weeks. Before we went to the movie, we had lunch and then went on a hike through a park that used to be a golf course but now has since closed. I don't know the story of what happened to it. Maybe since so many kids are being drugged these days, their hand-eye coordination as adults has been destroyed and they suck at golf. Although I suck at golf and, well, I just find it tedious. I much prefer putt-putt or mini golf, which I'm actually pretty decent at. I can narrowly beat my dad and younger brother now. Couldn't up until a few years ago. Now the park has been left alone to be reclaimed by forest, which will take decades, but that's what we did. Oh, my dad and brother insisted on having lunch at McDonald's again. I have no idea why they keep knowingly eat what they know they're going to hurl an hour later. I went across the street to a pizza and sub-sandwich place, got better quality food for less money, and came back to meet them. We could have all gotten pizza and sandwiches, and I offered to get us them, and we could have kept our lunches down. Well, I did, at least. Oh well. So this movie, I'm amazed that a movie like this is able to come out now. I don't know how long it was in the making, but it well demonstrates why the Second Amendment, the right of all American citizens, and no, you are not a citizen if you came here illegally or have not finished the process to citizenship, but the right of all American citizens to bear arms. Let's talk about what happens in the film. Paul Kersey is a surgeon who lives with his wife and daughter, and has a brother who is, from time to time, low on money and asks him for help, but the brother, at least is a good guy. Dr. Kersey is called into work on the night his wife and daughter have a special birthday dinner planned, and while not the most unfair example I've seen, they are disappointed that he has to work. Now, I've had my share of troubles and exasperations with doctors. Actually, it's putting it rather lightly. But some things I understand. They sometimes are going to have to leave to work long hours, unpredictable hours, and they're going to have to work late. Also, it's said that doctors make a lot of money. Often what happens, though, is they spend a lot of money to keep a certain standard of lifestyle for their wives and children, and end up spending a lot more than they actually have, go into massive credit card debt. This has happened with several of my dad's friends, so a lot of the times, once that's been going on for a while, they look on paper like they're earning a good income, but are in unimaginable debt. So, not everything is as it seems. Well, as Paul Kersey is working that night, 3 criminals break into his house. The wife sees them, her name is Lucy, and the daughter's name is Jordan. So Lucy sees them skulking about before they get into the house, and then sees their footprints in the house. It calls to her daughter to bring her phone to her so they can call the police. The burglars get to them, force Lucy to open her husband's safe while another ties up their daughter. It very much looks like he's about to rape her. When Jordan attempts to fight back a little, the invaders, as far as they're aware, they kill the wife and daughter. Paul learns about this at the hospital where they are brought in, and his wife Lucy dies. Jordan marginally survives. She is alive, in a coma for the majority of the film. Paul eventually finds a way to track down the home invaders and starts killing them off. not only because of the family they took from him, but also because they are gang members, violent criminals, and are making life extremely violent and dangerous for numerous others. He turns into a vigilante known popularly as the Grim Reaper, because no one can make out his face, save for he's a white guy in a hoodie, but... which, in the age of so much digital recording, like, it's set in the exact present day, and there's cell phones and iPads and video recorders. Kind of hard to believe that nothing captured his face, but whatever. That's all I'll say about it for now. It does bring up quite the list of important things to talk about. One is, the Kersey wife and daughter are attacked and maimed by a random house invasion. As far as I can remember, the criminals had no ties to or grudge against Paul or his family at the start. Random home invasions do occur, but it's far more likely, far more common, at least in relatively peaceful neighborhoods, for assailants to be known to their victims. There's far more often some kind of previous connection or relation. And there's an irony in the very beginning of the movie when Jordan says she is undergoing some self-defense training and demonstrates on her uncle that she knows a certain neck hold that can stop someone in their tracks. It's a clear demonstration of female either overconfidence, vanity, or just plain delusion. I'm not sure which. Or maybe all three. They like to pretend they can take care of themselves. We're seeing this in movies and shows all the time. But in reality, what happens when they come face to face with real violence? Most of them don't stand a chance. It's a little funny with the well, I say funny, no. I get, well, I don't know exactly what word to use. When these invaders come, Lucy runs into the kitchen and searches through so many drawers and things for her phone, but never thinks to grab a knife. Granted, the intruders have guns, but considering the time it would take for help to arrive, she may as well try to grab something. A knife isn't much, but it's more of a fighting chance than nothing at all. Jordan made one minor attempt at self-defense before her and her mother were maimed. I think they may have been raped as well. It's not explicit. But killed and nearly killed to the point where the mom died and the girl only marginally survived. One difference between men and women is that men are much better at recognizing the fact that if someone has broken into your home and attacked your family, they've already shown that they cannot be trusted at all. And they need to be taken down not only to protect the family, but also to make an example of the people who did so that a similar occurrence will not happen again, or at least be less likely to. And it's not just men. Boys know this too, unless they've been so brainwashed by decades in gynocentric public schools and single mother wastelands that it's been kept from them. Historically, the role of strong, caring fathers like Paul Kersey was to teach their sons lessons and realities like this. There is no son there's no son in the movie, but had there been, and had he been handled realistically, or respectfully, not just making the boy a jerk or a lazy bum again, as movies have done before, a teenage or young adult son would have acted far more decisively than either his mother or sister, again, had there been a boy. It had either gotten his family out of the house as soon as he realized there was intruders, or gotten a weapon himself, and call his dad as well, so they could deal with the situation. After the three of us, my brother, my dad, and I, left the movie, and we were walking to the parking lot, we saw someone following us. Luckily, this person went in another direction soon enough, but we were talking on the way home about the possibility of having to confront someone walking home in a situation like that, and our dad is an ancient. My brother and I are relatively strong, and it would have been extremely stupid for a lone assailant to attack 3 men walking together. The same just isn't true when it's 3 girls or women. It's just a fact of life. This is part of the reason why, in movies like Taken, the father, and when there are older brothers, when they appear, and are written halfway decently, very skeptical of allowing women, particularly young women, to travel without adult chaperones along with them. Travel the world, go on tours and things. Again, it's just a reality that at some point we're going to have to admit. We've played the girls and women can take care of themselves just as the boys and men can for decades now, and I went along with it for a time, but reality has very much disproven it. Men and boys are protectors, and they don't really even get a choice in the matter. If they did, the draft would not exist. If they got to choose, they wouldn't be consistently expected to be the first line of defense for their families. But since they are, and since those are the expectations of them, we really need to stop lying to ourselves. Imagine if the uncle, Frank Kersey, had been in the house when the invaders came. He would have done something more decisively. What did the women do? Well, they submitted to the demands of the invaders and begged, "Please don't hurt us," hoping that they could just get through the situation if they complied. Well, look how that turned out. Yes, the girl attempted a bit of self-defense, but it was too little too late. She had already allowed herself to be tied up, and was absolutely no match for the criminals. Now let's talk a little bit about this Grim Reaper identity that the father takes on. Actually, it's a name given to him by the media. I don't think he ever called himself that, but he takes it upon himself to kill the criminals who brutalized his family, as well as one neighborhood gangster. After a little boy shows up at the hospital, having been shot in the leg after he failed to meet the dealer's quota or something, whatever that was, wasn't really explained much. They dealt with it and moved past it quickly in the movie, but black neighborhoods are very high in crime rates, especially inner city black neighborhoods. A lot of Central American countries are as well, and families are terrified, and the children suffer immensely, often being conscripted into the gangs and dying very young. A lot of this is the fault of fatherless homes, or at least a large percentage of the fault is fatherless homes, and one main culprit of the epidemic of very few fathers in the homes is bad choices of the single mothers, which is not helped by politicians at all. But even so, people have known politicians aren't to be trusted for a long time. It really does come down to individual choice to make lives better. Now, there's debate in the movie between radio and talk show hosts about are vigilantes a good thing or not, which we've seen in movies like this before, and in superhero movies as well. But I find it interesting that for once a movie did not race bait. Thank God, because we have had way too much of that already. A white guy shooting criminals in a black neighborhood, at least the first couple of them, he moves on to other people soon enough. I mean, come on. We know what the initial outcry would be. It would not in any way be looked at as casually as the movie does, or at least as not offended. I mean, what would the first thing we would have heard been? Racist! White supremacist! KKK! Even when it's completely unjustified, that is the response for months, if not years. And the only thing that spares this movie at all is the fact that the guy is Paul Kersey. One, sympathetic in that he lost his wife and daughter to a horrible attack upon his house, and that we saw it. And two, he's taking out criminals. Well, again, criminals and gangs are a huge problem in black communities. Not only black communities, and in Central American communities, and there was the movie American Made about the drug cartels in was it Central and South America? Either one. And if you want a good explanation of what can be done to help, go listen to Jesse Lee Peterson, who frequently talks about the need to clear out crime and rebuild the families. Now, there's been criticism of this movie since it clearly raises the support of the right of American citizens to purchase and bear arms, of coming out less than a month after the Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School shooting. Well, for one thing, I seriously doubt this movie was made within the past 2 to 3 weeks, and in fact, now is the time when we do need to be reminded of the topic. And we need to keep the conversations going. And as for the high school shooting, again, my God, that school had a mouthful of a name. The police, the sheriff, the police, the sheriff, the FBI had so many opportunities to stop the shooter. They had received warnings about his dangerously violent behavior and intends to shoot up a school for months. Years, actually. And why hasn't the sheriff and FBI, why haven't people there been arrested as well as the shooter? I mean, are they not going to be held accountable for their negligence? This actually goes into the very point. People want the cops to prevent violence, even if the cops are only minutes away. I mean, criminals can easily slaughter many people in the span of minutes. This is not that hard to calculate or understand. I actually addressed this topic in far more detail in my video, my thoughts on the Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School shooting. Jordan eventually wakes up and learns off-screen that her mother died. The police have the whole time spent the movie slowly figuring out that Paul is the Grim Reaper, but end up not arresting him because I think they conclude that everyone that he killed did make sense to kill. I actually thought for a brief time that the uncle was going to turn himself in and say he was the Reaper so that his brother could stay with his daughter. I'm glad that didn't happen. I rather liked Frank. The last assailant breaks into Paul's house out of revenge. With a new group of goons, Paul kills all but the leader, who injures him, hears his daughter, realizes that Jordan, who had been hiding, is in the house. She hears her father collapse because he's been wounded. She comes out to check, and the guy who broke in now, which is the one of the creepiest the criminals by far, says Paul is now going to listen to his daughter burn to death. Bad move. Luckily, Paul has a hidden rifle and puts an end to the guy then and there, which in that situation is exactly the right response. There actually was a story I once heard of a man whose house was broken into. Not the exact same story, but much like this. The intruders tied him up, told him that if he did nothing, everything would be all right, and they made him listen as they raped his daughters and burned them alive. So that kind of thing has happened, and it is why men have to be decisive in the defense of their homes, and this is where the Second Amendment comes in. This kind of thing is why they don't trust people, especially the government, when they say, trust us to protect you and we will take care of you. And speaking of the school shooting, parents tend to trust that their children are safe in schools, And then the sheriff and the FBI do fucking nothing about a known threat for years on end. The real lesson to take away from this film is not to be a vigilante, but to be self-reliant.